It looks like we're live. Are we live? Okay, thumbs up. And the band practice is in session. It's our standards working group meeting. This is OpenJS Foundation group of interested persons in standards. It's a long-winded way of introducing our group. We have 2.5 agenda items for today. And the first was tagged by the one and only Brian Cardell, I believe, a home for reference implementation polyfills. This is issue number 106. And it extends from conversations that we had last year at the W3C Technical Plenary and Advisory Council meeting. That's coming up again here at the end of the month because time flies. Brian, would you like to provide context for this and perhaps help us lead the discussion?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I'm having a little bit of connectivity issues today, so if it gets too bad, then somebody else will have to take over, Jory, I guess. Yeah, so there was a question that came up that was, let's see, currently in the standards development process, there are proposals that go from a speculatively polyfilled idea that just like some community group works on, all the way through as that gets more fleshed out, and then at some point it becomes a true polyfill where it's shipping in some browsers and you're just providing something to fill the gaps for everybody else. And there is sort of no connection or life cycle around those. There's no way for them to make sure that we have a way to find them or evaluate them or link them to a specification or make sure that they don't experience just entire bit spec rot. So the idea was if we could provide an easy way for those communities to submit their things to the OpenJSF as a place for those to live in perpetuity and make sure that they continue to exist and that they've checked all of the right sorts of boxes. And maybe for the W3C to introduce into their spec templates a way for them to link to them so that developers can help evaluate those technologies as they're developing. In other words, to like meet developers where they live, which is a thing that we have worked on kind of for a long time to improve the communication back and forth. So I think it's a really interesting idea. There's a lot to work out, I guess, but that's the...
I see 2 of our participants with their hands raised, and I apologize, I missed those. So Jordan, your hand is first in the order, and let me check in with you.
Cool. Yeah, so I don't maintain W3C polyfills generally, but I'm one of like a very, very short list of people that maintains widely used JavaScript language polyfills. Like me and one other person are the top 2, depending, I don't know which order is which depending on the week, but and then there's a very long gap to the next person who's also on TC39. And then there's very little people after that. So there really isn't a community of polyfills that needs collecting and managing, because like in the sense that unless the 2 or 3 of us decided to pool our resources on the same polyfill, which would be wise, but there's different technical choices that we've all made, and that's why that hasn't happened. Like each of these are single maintainer projects and will likely be for the duration. I think that it's the generic advantages of a foundation, right, that prevent like bus factor type problems and things like that are good, like good to apply to a polyfill ecosystem. But the real challenge is finding maintainers, and being in a foundation doesn't necessarily help that problem unless it's like, unless what the foundation is doing is removing obstacles, concrete obstacles that the existing maintainers have identified between them and new contributors, which is usually going to be money, I think. So I guess I'm skeptical about this as an idea, as like a concerted effort. And then separately, like JavaScript spec proposals already do link to any and all polyfill implementations that are out there, but specifically to avoid like blessing one of them as like, this is the endorsed implementation. TC39's tried really hard not to do that, to like not say that this is the golden implementation of this part of the spec, and and everything else is just trying to catch up. And I would be surprised if W3C didn't share a similar sentiment. So
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, there was definitely some conversation in there about the idea of blessing a spec or blessing a polyfill. So very frequently, I think the thing is that there is a polyfill provided by the community who's working on the spec itself. There are, of course, other ones.
But like the long-term challenges aren't usually about providing the polyfill during the time that the spec is being worked on, because that's when everyone's excited about it. And so people are like happy to help. But as soon as the spec is finalized and starts shipping in browsers, and it becomes possible for anybody to stop using the polyfill at all, then long-term maintenance of those things is the challenge. And if the JS Foundation, the OpenJS Foundation could solve that problem, then awesome. Like I have many packages that could use that help, polyfills or not. But I'm not under the impression that that's a problem, that's a human problem anybody really knows how to solve yet.
So capturing what you're saying in a more concrete way, Jordan, it's that this particular thing may not address the needs or concerns of the polyfill maintainers unless long-term maintenance is really because it becomes say a crutch or something that developers are relying on, and at that point it becomes something that could be benefit from the foundation. I want to make sure that Mike, Samuel, who also had their hand raised, gets their question in before they forget it, which is always.
I think Jordan made most of the points that I was going to make. I guess the maintenance is shared maintenance effort is super important, as he pointed out. And I think when I was writing polyfills, kind of some of the things that made it a lot easier were just I think, I don't know, Jordan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you or Daniel Ehrenberg had put together some project templates, and those kinds of things smooth the way.
So that was for I maintain a template for proposal repositories specifically, and separately I had brought up a topic in TC39 of which Dan and I were the largest participants, where because I did not think it was a good idea for a proposal to publish a polyfill. For the reasons I've mentioned, like blessing a polyfill and so on. And I think that project templates are a good idea, but they're like for shims or polyfills, but there are a lot of technical decisions that are made that kind of can't be generalized. In other words, I could make a template for all of my 100 and some odd polyfills because I make them all the same, but that wouldn't provide the use cases that like the core JS maintainer would need. And, and like Matthias does the other one, and like, he may not agree with all of those technical decisions and may want to implement them differently. And so it's kind of like providing a set of tests that could easily be run against a polyfill seems like a foundation level project that would be enthusiastically received by W3C or TC39, right? Like
kind of
like
bridging
like
Mocha and Test 262 kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, even though Mocha is a foundation project, that may be too opinionated, but just there isn't an easy way right now to run like Test 262 tests against anything that's not a browser that hasn't already set up their process. And I don't know about web platform tests or how easy or hard those are to run, but I'm assuming they're not super easy because they also probably are designed with browsers as their audience. In other words, large corporations that can invest millions of dollars and person hours into integrating them. So like that's a problem I would very much love to see solved that would definitely help the polyfill and shim communities. But yeah, I'm not sure if project templates would add a ton of value.
So the thing of value there, just to reiterate, so that I kind of understand, being able to run tests on a bunch of different platforms. But, you know, I guess you might mention the large organizations that that do serious browser development. They all have kind of test pooling and test resources, and
Yes.
having something that would let a small project fan out tests easily would ease development.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't even think Babel or TypeScript, maybe Babel does, but like runs test 262 tests against their output. So like, and those are significantly larger than my teeny little packages or, you know, all the single maintainer polyfill projects that are out there. But all of them could use the benefit of compliance testing, essentially.
Mike Champion also had some questions that to put to this, and I think it kind of gets around what we're saying as well, which is like, what audience are we really looking to see the benefit, you know, of this committee's work in this space, which basically set of constituencies would we want to serve? And I think Brian and I have had some long-ranging conversations about this as well, where we've talked about, you know, maybe this is a resource or this is something, a benefit to just the broader developer community, because we're providing some central place for information about them. But we're also hearing like threads of, you know, how could this be a benefit to the polyfill maintainers themselves, with testing or with maintenance or whatever. So maybe this is a good question for us to talk about on a higher level, which is like which is that population that we maybe want to think about serving, primarily, not only, but primarily. I'll throw that out there.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with. I've made a similar comment before to Jordan's point about one of the things that it seems like we could do is provide a means of like actually running tests. But yeah, I think definitely part of the idea here is some way for you to make some kind of judgment and know what this thing is, and like how do you find one or more of them. So I guess this is a little bit less difficult in TC39 than it is necessarily in just the general web platform. But yeah, I mean, I actually fully support what Jordan is saying there, actually, that adding a way for us to run tests on them would be a really useful thing.
I mean, that would also be a step towards some kind of standardization among the way the polyfills are written anyway, right? Because like you know, a way to run tests could involve some sort of adapter, but we could also design it so that if your API is a certain way, then you don't need an adapter, and it's easier, and that would gently push the ecosystem towards that approach, right? And the more the ecosystem kind of when the maintainers and users of the ecosystem have sort of voted with their feet about like a certain way of structuring an API, then it becomes a much easier sell that that's something we should standardize, as opposed to if we just come sail in and try and dictate something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think actually being able to judge the quality of something and know its status is actually a big part of the problem, because you can find polyfills, but you're doing it by searching, and frequently you don't have any idea about like what is the quality of this, and like is it accurate on things that I care about, which might not be everything in some cases.
But in practice, I think it's also rare that there's more than one choice, and that when there is more than one choice, typically the one that has an outsized amount of usage is probably the best choice. And if we find concrete cases where that's not the case, then that would be really compelling. But like, if you just look at all of the alternatives out there for polyfilling a thing, the one that has the most downloads by a large margin is probably doing the right thing, because a ton of people are using it. So I'm not sure how difficult a choice it is when it comes to polyfills, you know.
I think it's, as Brian was saying, it's more difficult in the W3C ecosystem. I'm sorry, Miles, go ahead.
That's okay. I just wanted to ask like a really quick, like raise a really quick point of order and kind of ask a question to the room. Since we have tried consistently here to make the standards working group a team that facilitates collaboration and kind of relationships, as opposed to being a place where the work necessarily directly happens. Michael Dawson has his proposal that he's putting together that landed around, like, I keep forgetting the name of it, but it's like not working groups, but like community groups where people can like kind of get together and do work under the foundation itself. I'd like to propose that perhaps, and I know we have extra time on the schedule, collaboration network. Thank you, Joe. My gut on this is that like our working group and our charter and our scope, that this is the work item that's being discussed is out of scope for us right now. And that perhaps a collaboration network group that wanted to focus on polyfills could be spun up to do this work and focus on this work. And if the work done in that group was something that they wanted to interface with other standards organizations on, then we could act as facilitators for them. And that's in no way trying to like say that I don't think that this work is important or that we shouldn't be doing it, but more so that to like maintain this group's charter as a facilitator, that seems appropriate. Now, the flip side would be if this is the kind of work that we think that this working group should do, that's pretty cool too. Like, I think that this is important stuff. But I think that like for the sake of our meetings and our focus of the meetings, like kind of debating the specifics of this, I feel like we should have like a broad ask from a group that's not us that's working on that for us to facilitate discussion. And if I misunderstood and that's what's being asked for, apologies, but just wanted to kind of make a point of order in that distinction and just ask to the room if my read on this is
I actually a little bit agree with you, Miles. This is like why the issue is not exceptionally specific. This actually is facilitation in the other direction, because it's coming from people in standards who are like, this is a need, at least in the W3C standards. And Jory and I have also heard from like individual developers who also have had these thoughts. So we thought we probably should bring an issue about like, is there an interest here in helping? Not necessarily like specifically what would we do, but like, is this a thing that we should try to connect people on somehow and facilitate some actual action?
Yeah, and I guess to like an answer to that, in my personal opinion, would be this sounds absolutely in scope for a collaboration space within the foundation. We'd need someone to want to champion that and run it. And I would imagine kind of like next steps that I would see here would be, you know, Brian, if you wanted to lead that, and I'm not trying to volunteer you, more just like you seem to be interested in it. And Jordan, if you wanted to get involved, because it seems like you have opinions here. This seems like the kind of thing where like the next steps would be setting up a collaboration space, trying to build some other momentum around it. And then if that group wanted to do something more official that involved like a liaison relationship, then they can kind of bring a proposal to this group asking for specific resources that they need.
Well, I think it makes sense to try this as like a collaboration space. If Brian, you know, we can chat about what that might mean. I mean, this has been
Sure. Yeah.
And I guess just like a motivation here, just like, cause I'm not trying to just be a party pooper, but like one of the things is like, I like, and I know it's strange to say this, but I like that this working group is like boring, administrative, and bureaucratic, mostly because I want that to be abstracted from people who want to do the work. And so that's part of the reason why I've consistently pushed back on these kinds of things, because I bet you there's a whole bunch of people who want to just work on polyfills and don't want to worry about like any of this bureaucracy stuff that we're talking about here. So I want to make sure that for like those folks, that there's a clear space where they can go and a clear space where they can ask for that support. And we're kind of keeping, you know, like a clear separation there. But again, you know, my philosophy and view doesn't always align with everyone. So like, please don't take this as like what we absolutely need to do. Just trying to be consistent.
Well, I certainly agree with it as a pattern in that, like, we get people who are actually interested in polyfills working on polyfill problems, and you know, and that's a quicker path to a solution for folks than it is to run that all through, you know, this committee who may or may not all be interested in polyfills, for example. So that it makes sense to me, and I think also the collaboration space may be more flexible for us to sort of figure out what it is that that we want to do. But where this intersects with what populations like our committee thinks that we want to prioritize serving, I think is very important. You know, for example, if the collaboration, if this committee felt that you know, we really want to serve maintainers, core maintainers, those developers as a first priority, then perhaps that informs the kind of activity that the collaboration space takes up first, as opposed to, say, servicing a broader population of consumers of these technologies. This is, you know, that's like slightly different. So I think that's where we would like any thought, but I think we're kind of sounding like we're saying the maintainers as a first priority, sounds like to me. So cool. Any other thoughts on this before we move to the next topic? I feel like I can hear Jordan eating his apple, even though he is muted.
Is there an action item for moving forward with the collaboration space, or is that premature?
I'm not sure what the status is of the collaboration network. Did that get final? Is that in?
I think Michael Dawson said today, I think it's a done deal. He has some ideas on what those collaboration spaces might be. And so I think probably going to Michael, and if you're interested in a polyfill one, is suggesting that as one of the first few. Joe, is that right?
Yeah,
Characterizing that?
Yeah, as far as I know, board approved today. I think Brian confirmed, and
Yeah.
Michael said he was going to merge it.
Okay, so it's a real thing now.
Deal.
It's a real deal. So we'll, it sounds like the action item is for Jory, Brian, Jory combo to talk to Michael Dawson about initializing a space for polyfillers. Yeah, like the ideas for team names are endless here. I'm really excited about that. Thank you. And thank you, Donovan / Anonymous Bat, for all the note taking. All right. Number 102 is the other agenda item, or the other issue that was tagged for our agenda today. I believe that we discussed this fairly thoroughly, and Gus was clear on their next steps. So I want to check in that this is actually one that we can remove the tag from, unless we feel, and maybe Jordan or Miles or Richard, maybe y'all know whether there's anything further that that Gus needed here.
I don't think there was anything more for right now, but I could be mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah, same for me. Nothing comes to mind, but I'm not confident that I've got an exhaustive sense of it.
Okay, I'm gonna just make a comment and ask them to let us know if there's other support, but that I'm removing the issue tag. If you all agree that that's the step. Just commented and bam, that is done. Okay, so the other, that I said 2.5 agenda items earlier. So we don't have an issue for this, but as Mike Champion mentioned when he was introducing himself at the beginning, and he did have to drop, he and Robin and myself had and Brian in a chat and had long-ranging sort of like briefing him on our activities so far, and I'm helping him kind of just get familiar with our past work and what we're looking to do. I think we are planning on having something of a brainstorming session and sort of a strategy focus session. And I think he does plan to, or I will do so on his behalf, open an issue for that so that we can make sure everybody's aware and prepped in advance that we'll have more of a strategy session in the coming weeks. So similar to how we've thought about the Collab Summit in the past as an opportunity to like get together and really like brainstorm on specific topics, we want to do the same but scoped to the standards space. And that will, I think, help us think about 2021 and how we organize our documentation, our agendas, our work items, so that it is more useful and consumable for our communities, and so that we have more productive ongoing meetings, which is something that brings me joy. I don't know about you. I have 4 copies of a book called Leading Great Meetings, if anybody would like to borrow it, because yeah, it makes me happy. Anything, you know, when you think about like strategizing for 2021, is there any topic or question on your mind that you would want to put to the group for framing or thinking ahead of time? That would be very helpful. That's a question for y'all. The answer could also be, sure, Jory, whatever.
Personally, most of my concerns about what's going on here are about how this group communicates with the community, the larger community. And you know, I found out a meeting or two ago about some of the mailing lists, so I went and subscribed, and I haven't seen a thing come across those. So I don't know how active they are, how they're used, how they're, you know, what's going on there. And you know, does there need to be I'm going to use the word list, if you will. I'm not sure it's the right thing, but for us, for talking about standards issues that we want to make sure member projects are aware of. That's what I'm still not completely clear on, even having gone through the list now and seeing what's there. Just not seeing activity.
I think this is one of Mike's topics too, and it's, I think, like one of the first things that I sent to the list as well, which is this is a thing we need to figure out how to do better, because I don't think that we do it great now. But as far as the strategy goes, I think that's the point, is to come up with a strategy. So kudos to everybody for trying to organize an actual strategy session to answer the question, as opposed to just making a statement like I did and saying we should figure this out and then not following up.
Do we think that there's anything that we don't know? Like, I mean, that's sort of like, okay, so of course there's lots of things I don't know, but is there anything on this topic that makes it hard to move forward because we feel like we don't have a firm enough answer on BAM, and that's why it's unclear? Or, you know, we could use some more guidance from this group over here, you know, like, is there missing info? Giuseppe Knows It All. That's the name of the show that we'll have now. Just kidding.
Sorry, what I missed?
I was asking if we had any missing info. Like, is there anything we don't know, or anything that we could use like more clarity on in order to like feel like we can move more purposefully? And so then I was making a Clarissa Explains It All, except for you walked into the frame. So it's like, it's Giuseppe Explains It All.
Maybe like it's really possible that I also have thought about this in the wrong way. It might be a good exercise to ask the individual projects how they would like to be represented, like how they would like to be involved, because OpenJS has grown, and it's like it's a considerable amount of things now. And you know, we're thinking about like how can we best facilitate sort of our best selves in how we participate in standards, how we make sure that people are heard and represented, and that we facilitate well. But I guess it's possible that maybe our ideas about that are not the same as the project. So it might be good to like ask projects some questions.
I like that idea.
I do too, and I feel like that's a fairly simple and straightforward bit of information we can try and gather, especially if we keep it fairly open-ended in terms of polling, you know, which might be simple as asking them a couple of open-ended questions. That's something we can field pretty quickly because it's a known group of people, and perhaps have to share and discuss during that strategy session. Would y'all be amenable to a quick Google Form style.
Are you saying that we would have answers by that strategy session?
I would think that, yeah, I mean, it seems like that's information that we would love to have as we consider that, right? Like,
yeah. I sort of imagine it the other way, that part of the strategy session would be to figure out what the question actually is. But yeah, no, we could do a preliminary sort of poll, definitely.
well, look at me. I just want to jump in with both feet. Sink or swim, Jory. Yeah, we could wait though. I mean, maybe.
I support you, and I will be here with a life raft if you start to get in trouble.
Little waiters, armed waiters.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a strong? I mean, do we have a strong preference for like getting folks' sort of feedback at, before or after?
I don't know. I think before is a good idea, actually, because it helps narrow things down a little bit. I feel like we should, take a few minutes and come up with what are the actual questions. I'm not sure this call is the right avenue to do that, but if you want to maybe get a couple of us to, formulate a poll in the next day or two, we can do that. Yeah.
We could, I mean, pretty quickly in our standards chat on Slack, come up with, say, 3 questions, keep it simple so they answer really fast, and some data is better than none? Question mark?
Yes.
I don't know if that's true.
I agree.
Okay, cool. All right, so that's an action item we can take, and use that info. I think that would be useful all the way around. Okay, so let's close this half item out because it wasn't technically on the agenda. Sorry, and thanks for y'all's consideration. If you want to continue to just chew on some ideas and thoughts for like what you might want to cover in our strategy session, please do that and either leave that in the standards chat or poke myself or Robin or Mike Champion or Brian, volunteering Brian here, and we'll make sure to get that on an agenda. So my expectation would be that this brainstorming / strategy session might be something that we do for maybe not the next standards meeting, but the one after that, because we want to give plenty of notice for folks who are interested, but for whom this may not be the best time. Is there any other business, any other things that I am not thinking about that you are, that need to be shared? Okay, cool. So just also a reminder, TPAC is coming up at the end of the month. They're opening up breakouts. If there's any breakout that you want to propose, or if you are that you want to participate in, or anything of that sort, let me know. I can link you all of the places where you might be able to go see that agenda coming together. So. All right, well, hearing no other business, I will say that our formal agenda is closed, and now we can just shoot the breeze if you want, or not.
So did I hear right? We're collaborating on ideas for questions for the poll in Slack?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
The standards working group census.
Census of the census standards, standard census. Oh Lord, that would be that'd be a thing, wouldn't it? Should we not be live on YouTube? Before I say something really silly, because
So who has the?
I
stop the
don't.
YouTube button?
I can't turn it off. Joe can. Okay.